Welcome back, everyone. So now that we talked about TCP, I want to talk about UDP. UDP is also an internet protocol. It stands for User Datagram Protocol. Now, the thing about UDP is that it's much faster than TCP because there is no connection. This is a connectionless protocol. What this means is that, remember with TCP, we talked about how there is that 3 handshake of the synchronized acknowledgement synchronize that happens, which establishes a connection between the client and server. And then we're constantly maintaining that connection until all data related to that session is complete. We don't do any of that with UDP, meaning that there is less resources consumed in order to maintain that connection between the client and the server. I'm going to call it a session because it's easier to think about it as a session. There's no sessions in UDP. What happens with UDP is that the client sends a request to the server. That request essentially allows the server to know that there's a client out there that wants some data. What's going to happen is that server is now just going to keep bombarding the client with data. It's just going to keep sending it over and over. Whether or not that data gets over there, the server does not care. It doesn't actually need to guarantee that data delivery. All it says is that I'm just going to keep firing data in that direction so that hopefully the client gets all of it. If it doesn't, though, that is not my problem. It is a much faster and simpler, and you can say it's a more efficient protocol because there is no connection here. That server will just keep sending and sending and sending data in that direction, hoping that the client gets it. But if it doesn't, that does not matter to the server. So here, you don't get guaranteed data delivery, and there's no retransmission at all. Because again, how do we know we need to retransmit if we don't even know that the client didn't get some part of the data? That is pretty much the thing about UDP. Now, the reason why you would use UDP is when you need some type of protocol where you don't care about the data being guaranteed. This is where you're talking about things like video streaming, live streaming, voice over internet protocol like VoIP. These are all use cases for UDP. When you think about a live stream, the most important thing is that it's live. You don't care that if in the middle of that transmission, some of the data gets corrupted and doesn't get sent over. It's just going to get corrected later anyways, because if you ever watch live streaming, you've seen before sometimes the video glitches out a little bit, but then it just continues live. In that moment, you as a user, you do not care that maybe you missed that section as much as you care that you're seeing live what's happening. Now here, that's pretty much the main difference between TCP and UDP as far as the use case goes. Generally speaking, you're going to use both sometimes depending on the needs of what you're building, but the majority of the time, you're pretty much just going to use TCP unless you're trying to build some live streaming service, then you're going to use UDP. And even then, it might vary depending on the use case. Again, it's context driven, but that's pretty much TCP versus UDP. These are two of the main protocols used in the internet. So the main thing you want to remember, if you care about the guaranteed delivery of data, TCP. If you don't care about that at all, and you want the speed and you want the performance, but data consistency and the overall delivery of data does not matter, then UDP. And that's it. Now let's move on.